All right, so we'll already jump right into it and begin with psychological development. To begin with, we'll look at the very definition as well as the nature versus nurture debate. The VCA study design states the interactive influences of hereditary and environmental factors on a person's psychological development. Therefore, this is a dot point that you are expected to know and be assessed on. Okay, so first of all, what is psychological development? Development refers to changes that occur in a person all the way from their birth right through to an elderly age and their death. Okay, so we develop our whole lives. It's not just about the concept of growing up, it's how the person changes throughout their life from birth to death. So a person's thoughts, emotions, and behaviors will all change constantly throughout their life. There may be more changes happening, say, during childhood and puberty. However, it is a lifelong process, even if it slows down, but we're always undergoing changes. Psychological development and the theories that we will look at, they try to explain why these changes occur and why we develop. So, what encompasses this is the nature versus nurture debate that looks at hereditary versus environmental factors, and you need to know both of these. The hereditary factors are the factors that are biologically passed down from an individual's parents to the actual individual. That's why it's hereditary. It's hereditary factors. It literally means your genetics, okay? So they influence your psychological development. For example, if you have parents with a certain disorder, especially both parents, you have a significantly higher risk that of developing the same disorder throughout your life than if your parents did not have that disorder. Okay, so that would be on the side of nature in this debate, and I'll get into a bit more detail about the debate as well. And then environmental factors are the events, experiences, and objects that shape a person's development. It's all of the external environmental influences on our development. So that may be other people, social relationships, the environment, the country you're growing up in, um, who you're surrounded by, what behaviors you're exposed to, what do you see and experience in your environment, and those kinds of things. So that would be on the nurture side of the debate. And we can see that both of these things are sort of the complete opposite of one another. So to just sort of go into a little bit of more detail about this debate, because you'll need to be able to discuss it. The expression of nature versus nurture describes the question of how much a person's characteristics are formed by either nature or nurture. So the hereditary factors versus the environmental factors. Nature, again, is those innate biological factors, especially your genetics, and nurture refers to things like upbringing, how you're raised, and life experience more generally. So traditionally, nature versus nurture was framed as a debate between those who argued about the dominance from one source versus the other, saying that it had to be either nature or either nurture, okay? But contemporary experts acknowledge, as we always acknowledge, we'll look at the biopsychosocial model as well, it's never one thing in psychology. So it was acknowledged that both nature and nurture played a role in psychological development and had complex interactions in different ways. So, how do they sort of work together? If we're saying that it's commonly accepted that both hereditary and environmental factors play a role in shaping our development through our lives, not only that, but both types of factors often influence each other. Okay, so a person's biological nature, those hereditary factors, can affect their experience of the environment. For example, if a person had a genetic disposition towards a certain trait, such as aggressiveness, They might be more likely to have particular life experience, those environmental factors, um, such as receiving negative reactions from parents or other people around them. Or a person who grows up to be very warm and sociable. Um, and this might be, again, a hereditary factor for them. They may seek out and elicit more positive social responses from their peers, more environmental factors that reinforce that quality within that person. So we can see that there's an interplay between nature versus nurture, and they help to enhance each other, or it may not be the case. So on the topic, we said if we had a hereditary predisposition to a certain disorder, let's say it's schizophrenia, okay? So the influence from an environmental factor may be that we're exposed to a certain traumatic event that sort of activates that disorder, activates that schizophrenia, and then the person begins to experience the symptoms. However, because of that interplay, if there was no genetic predisposition to schizophrenia in the first place, and it has been proven with schizophrenia that there needs to be a genetic link, if there was no link, it would not be possible to just experience the environmental factor of a certain kind of trauma and have schizophrenia, because they need to be, we need to see both, okay? Both the hereditary and environmental factor in that case. Beautiful. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. But to prove that it was both nurture versus nature and that they both have an influence on psychological development, you need to know about twin and adoption studies as per the study design. So twin studies involved the use of twins, which obviously means that in terms of when we're looking at nature, that they will have the same or similar hereditary factors and qualities because of being twins. So the research found that identical twins, which have 100% the same genetics and thus are identical, were more likely than fraternal twins, known as non-identical twins with 50% of the same genetics, to have similar characteristics, but that these characteristics often weren't exactly the same. So even if identical twins, despite being similar in a lot of ways, weren't exactly the same, that shows that it is the combination of hereditary and environmental factors together influencing psychological development. Otherwise, the twins would be exactly the same if we were on the nature side of the argument. Now, alternatively, adoption studies involve the participation of adopted children rather than looking at twins. In these, researchers examine the similarities and differences between the child and their biological versus adopted parents. So the parents they were separated from, that they're actually related to, versus the parents that have adopted them, that have no hereditary link to the child. And they found that the intelligence of a child was more strongly linked to their biological parents rather than their adoptive parents, despite being raised with the adoptive parent. That also shows that genetic factors, nature, plays a significant role in an individual's intelligence. And now this is widely accepted that one of the biggest determinants of IQ and intelligence is that of the parents, okay? So that's very interesting. But ultimately, especially due to observing those twin studies, we know that it is both nature and nurture that influence development. Okay.